Hi, aloha.
Hello, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Doing good, thanks. It's really raining here. I tried to close all of my doors and windows so it's not super. Hopefully, you can't hear it a lot, but it's just
Oh,
dumping rain.
really? It's coming down
Yeah,
there. So where are you
yeah.
again?
I'm on the North Shore of Kauai.
Oh, okay. Do you guys get a lot of rain over there?
A lot. Yeah, there's the winter is like the rainy season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the
Gotcha.
wettest place on the earth is actually the center of this island.
And then the weather stays the same pretty much throughout the year, or you guys do have some colder
Nope.
months?
No, we get summer and hot months and stuff. I mean, it's still 70 degrees at the lowest. It's still really warm. We just get rain instead of snow.
You can get wet and be fine. Be like, I'll get wet. I don't
Yeah,
mind.
it's totally,
Right
yep,
now it's chilly, so if I get wet, something might happen. I might get a cold
yeah,
and
it's totally fine. Yeah, it's really temperate and nice here.
Awesome. I'm so excited. I mean, you have so many years of knowledge. I mean, I started my journey in 2007. So I haven't done it professionally. It's been in my own little world through therapists, through professionals, and then through my own research. I've really consumed myself with it because I'm the
Mhm.
type of person, if I don't know it, I have to like learn it and investigate it and chop it up and dice it. So,
Same, the same
yeah.
way. I need 10,000 hours in something before I teach it. I need to know it works for me. I need to know it works.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was in group therapy and the girl was there for like 8 years. I was only there for 3 years and I surpassed her like you wouldn't believe. I'm like, come on, man, don't you want to like learn more and get out of here?
Mm. And where are you in the world?
New York.
Oh, in the city.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
15 minutes from there. It's a borough. New York City is one of my boroughs, so I'm in Queens.
Mhm.
Born and raised, never left the place. I'm 48.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually lived in Manhattan. I lived in Chelsea my junior year of college. I went to FIT, funny enough. I don't do anything
Oh,
related to that, obviously, but
wow. So you had a
yeah.
little fashion bug in you. Yeah, you wanted to do some fashion.
I just wanted to live in New York for a year because I thought it would be good life experience. And I was in a business major at the time in St. Augustine, Florida, and they were like, "Oh, you can go to New York to FIT and get your," it was like, what was it, associates in like merchandising management or something that I've never used, but I had
It's still
a
there.
great time. I had a
Yeah.
great time
Right.
living
How
there.
was your, so 1 year you did New York City?
Yeah, and it was like when I turned 21, I was mostly partying and having fun, so I didn't take it too seriously.
Homework.
Yeah. Once I realized they had this business math class and I'm not at all like a math person, and once I realized their business math class was like super easy and simple, I was like, oh, okay, we can relax. We're gonna have fun here.
I think it's like my niece went to college now in the middle of nowhere upstate in New York. And I'm like, I think that's the best one. You're in New York City and you're 21 or 22 and you're going to college and tons of
Right.
distractions here.
Tons of distractions. Yeah, exactly. We got to live in the FIT dorms, which was really nice, as we didn't have to pay for that, but we also weren't getting paid to go there. So we were just on super tight budgets and just kind of playing around.
Ramen noodles and
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally.
yeah, over here we have it this areas in Brooklyn that people actually go in to get free pizza. If you buy a beer, you get a small pie of pizza. And I would go in there with my friend just hanging out and I see them come in, they will have the whole pizza, have their beer by themselves and then leave. So that was like their dinner for the night. And it was all strategic.
Yep, totally. Totally.
All right, let's get started. So, Dr. Nicole Summer has been in the healing and therapy world for the last 20 years. She specializes in trauma resolution using somatic therapy. She is a doctor of physical therapy, a craniosacral therapist, a somato emotional release practitioner, a Reiki master slash teacher, a Kundalini and Hatha yoga teacher, and specializes in pelvic floor recovery. She's a TEDx speaker. Congrats. And she teaches her clients to understand the connection between your wounded inner child, your nervous system, and the vision of who you want to be as a powerful, wise, and healthy adult. She holds a 9-month trauma and polyvagal informed training to facilitate emotional healing through the body with reparenting, subconscious mind reprogramming, and nervous system regulation. I had to go over that a few times. There was some big words in there. I was like, let me rehearse this a little bit.
That's okay. And you can call me Summer. I know a lot of people end up calling me Nicole for some reason, but my it's actually my middle name. So my first name's Summer. You can just call me.
Oh, awesome. Summer
Yeah.
with Somer.
Yeah.
Oh, so you have to always be happy. You have a name called Summer. Like the season. So okay, so quite an impressive resume you have. I just want to take it back to the early days. Like when I ask you, like, how did it all start for you? Was it something that you loved from the beginning, or was it like there was a profound moment for you that said, you know what, I want to explore this more and understand everything about it?
Yeah, if I think about like from the beginning, like when I was just trying to find out like what do I want to do in the world, I was going through a yoga teacher training in Australia right out of college, and I realized
Mhm.
I really loved the anatomy portion. I loved learning about the body, which led me to get my master's in occupational therapy and my doctorate in physical therapy. And I was just always interested in getting to the root of people's pain. That's really what it was. I wanted to get to the root of people's pain. And after intensively studying, all of the Western science and neuroscience and biomechanics and like all of that world, really, and I lasted not that long, some years in the orthopedic world of physical
Mhm.
therapy, and just really saw its limitations. I saw the limitations of, people walking in and me being handed a script that says treat this person's right shoulder or their left hip or whatever it was, but I could see their entire system was rigid and tense and their
Mhm.
nervous system was dysregulated. And I just never had the tools from my Western science training or the time to, actually get to the root of what was causing their pain. And
Yeah.
I spent the next, like, gosh, 17 years sort of filling in the gaps of what I thought physical therapy school left out, which was, studying the energy body and the emotional body and the nervous system, diving deep into trauma work and polyvagal theory and, all of the things that I see now really create sustainable healing in the body. And so that was sort of like my academic, background, you could say. And then, of course,
Mhm.
all of us have our own, childhood trauma that plays out in our adult relationships that teaches us very deep lessons and gives you an embodied experience of the work. And, that was no different for me. And it was really around, I know I've been in the healing therapy world for 20 plus years, but it was really around 2020 that I went through a very traumatic divorce, and I needed to understand what was happening to my system because my nervous system kept going into the freeze response. I was
Mhm.
completely overwhelmed. I'd be like not able to move or speak, and really needed to understand, because I had studied neuroscience in my Western science degree, but that didn't give me any practical tools as to like, what do I do with myself to either prevent the freeze response, come out of the freeze response? What do I do with myself when I'm highly triggered? I didn't know any of that stuff. And so that's when I dove into the work of Dr. Stephen Porges, who created polyvagal theory, and which is
Mhm.
just the most recent understanding and research that we have of how the nervous system works. And then,
Mhm.
all of my, they say, all the pain has a purpose, but that's really been my experience. The pain that I went through having to unfreeze my nervous system and recover and strengthen my nervous system is literally like the work that I've birthed into the world. And so it's all of it I can see has had a very big purpose.
Wow. I mean, the academic part is always helpful, right? It combines together with the somatic part and the body healing. So you could incorporate everything together. Now, does the emotional part really affect like bone pain and like if a person has back issues and you know can that also come from overthinking for a couple of years about a certain negative situation and then eventually your bones or you can develop a certain pain in a certain section of your body and be like, well, let me go to the doctor and figure this out instead of saying, maybe I've been thinking about this negative thought constantly for a year and it could be that.
Mm. So I'm gonna like flip this on its head a little bit because
Okay.
it's a common like misconception of, it's somatic therapy is like the opposite of it's a bottom up approach, meaning body to brain approach. Whereas like talk therapy, where you're just doing mindset and belief work, is about let's look at the brain and how that affects the body. And that certainly has its place. Like cognitive reframing has its place, of course. And I think people get a lot of benefit from even getting modeled a secure relationship with a therapist can be really useful. However, if the body isn't addressed, if you don't get to the soma, meaning the body and the nervous system, it's a little bit of a miss, because what we know now, as far as neuroscience, and this is a lot of Dr. Stephen Porges's work, is that our state precedes our story. And so meaning our physiological state of our nervous system will dictate our thoughts and our emotions and our behaviors. And so that's one piece. And then I would say, as far as, I mean, I could tell you this from like my personal experience and from client experience,
Yeah.
but for me, it started to get very real, going through. I remember 3 days after I left my ex, I had I was waking up with this like searing eye pain, and I didn't have any idea where it came from. And
Wow.
I had acupuncture, and she'd done a bunch of work on my liver. Liver's all about releasing anger. I didn't know any of this. And
Yeah.
I went to 3 different eye doctors, and the third one was like, so you haven't had anything like scratch or like braise your eyes? I'm like, nothing. And she said, I don't know how to explain it, Summer, but you have multiple corneal abrasions across both eyes. And she put some protective lenses in, and they heal pretty quickly with that. But like she's like she said, I don't know how to explain it. And so I went back to the acupuncturist, not thinking anything of it. And then I told the acupuncturist what was happening. She said, Summer, we just did all this work on releasing your liver. Anger lives in the liver. Liver energy releases out of the eyes. She goes, think about it. You were literally seeing red. And I was just like, wow. That was like
Wow.
such a big experience, because I was like waking up with like nerve pain in my eyes. Like I couldn't blink open or close. It was painful. And so that's one example, I would say, of like a lot of physical examples I've had of, repressed emotion manifesting in the physical body. And so that's one example, just of using a personal example for
Yeah.
ease. And it's like there's also the fact that like once we've repressed emotions for so long, is that it changes, that a repressed emotion is just energy in motion. That energy gets stuck in the tissue and in our fascia, and it changes the tissue, it changes the fascia. And so
Mhm.
for a while I was only in the physical body, and then for a while I was like only addressing the emotional body, and then coming to the middle of that is like what's really true is we have to address both, because if we've been in decades of chronic nervous system dysregulation, and we've repressed all these emotions since childhood, the body will show that change, and whatever limited mobility or muscle tension or pain that's in the body, it will show that. And so yeah, it's a matter of like understanding what are the emotions that have gone repressed, and then also like let's still address the physicality, of fascial adhesions that are present, or tension or tightness in the body that's present from that being the case for so long.
So for you, when you healed your liver, that came from you doing your body work, your somatic, and healing your anxiety, I guess, healing your
Yeah, liver specifically around anger, and that's one example, and but it's specifically around anger. So a lot of my healing really came from developing a new relationship with the sympathetic side of my nervous system, which is the side that is like meaning our anger and our power, right? So like for me, it was like developing a relationship with anger in a way that I knew I could identify it. I no longer would project it onto other people. I knew how to run it through my body. It's like building this capacity in the nervous system to be able to express, whether it's anger or grief or fear, being able to express outwardly, through the body what we experience on the inside. And so it's like I use the word congruence a lot, so congruence meaning how can we match our outward expression with our internal experience, right? So it's
Mhm.
like becoming congruent in our life. And one way we do that is learning how to build capacity to be with our emotions and express them through the body in a healthy way.
Well, can you give us a summary of how it works? Like you gave us that, but how's the steps go? Like how many days you have the I guess a retreat, and is that part of what you teach?
All of what I'm talking about is part of what I teach. And yeah, I have a 6 month program called Foundations of Healing that is for personal healing. And I have a 9 month facilitator training program for people that want to learn my method, which is called somatic reparenting. But the process looks like it's the components are really taking people through the different psychosocial childhood stages of development and
Mhm.
understanding, taking them to, it looks like a guided meditation, a somatic reparenting meditation is taking them to the parts of their younger self that I like to say are like emotionally frozen in time, right? Like the parts that need some sort of resolution, right? That need your love and need your reassurance and need your presence and your care. And so part of it is that work is the inner child work and the reparenting work, right?
Mhm.
And then the other part is the nervous system work, which I use this acoustic intervention for the vagus nerve called the Safe and Sound protocol. It's actually Dr. Porges's protocol. It has all this research and science behind it, but it basically is a way. It's like a hack for the nervous system, is how I see it. And what it does is helps create cues of safety in the body. So it helps the nervous system optimize its ability to regulate itself. And so
Wow.
it's meant to be in conjunction with another therapy. So I pair it with the somatic reparenting method, which is the part where, we're doing all of the trauma work and reconnecting with the inner child. And it's not about reliving trauma or re-traumatization. We
Mhm.
definitely avoid that. But it is about, retrieving and integrating these parts that have been kind of left behind and oftentimes kind of running the show, right? Like the angry teenager, right? Or the abandoned 8-year-old or whoever it is inside that like has these like um, deep processes, that need to be felt, and need to be acknowledged. And so it's both for me, it's the inner child work, it's the teaching people how to develop felt sense and, learn the signs and signals of the body, which is somatic therapy. And then really looking at how do we build capacity and resilience in the nervous system to be able to move through, some of this old trauma that a lot of people think is like, oh, they avoid it because they think this is going to be overwhelming to me. It's not going to be, it's going to take me down if I go there. Right. So it's
Yeah.
a big part of my work is teaching people how to strengthen and build capacity in the nervous system.
Wow. That's so deep.
And to
I
me, it gets to the root. I was always looking to get to the root of like people's pain. And I'm like,
yeah.
this is the root. If you miss the nervous system, you're missing the root.
So the nervous system is where the anger is developed, and
I would say that depending on what state of the nervous system you're talking about, okay, is that like, so you mentioned anger. So I'll just break that down. So we have the sympathetic side of the nervous system, right? That's the side most people are familiar with. It's the fight or flight response,
Mhm.
right? So anger is going to fall under the fight response, right?
Okay.
So depending on what state of the nervous system you're in, so the other side, so meaning more of like a freeze response for people, that's going to be more like shame or overwhelm or collapse or depression, right? Whereas symptoms of sympathetic activation, which is what I think a lot of people kind of they just run with and they live their daily life on, is like anxiety, anger, restlessness, racing thoughts, and a lot of this work is about teaching people how to identify what state you're in, what
Mhm.
state of the nervous system that you're in, because, honestly, what I see so much all the time is that people they've been in so many, honestly it's usually decades of chronic dysregulation of the nervous system. And so that what we call a ventral vagal state or a regulated state, that calm and relaxed, present state we all really strive for, is very foreign to them. And what's actually really familiar to them is anxiety, right? Or racing thoughts, or they can't get out of their story or their head. And so once you can start to, for me it's like you gotta help people understand, this is what I'm so passionate about. It's like, here's how the nervous system works. Like every one of us should have been taught this in like middle school or high school.
Yeah.
Your body, here's how your nervous system works. And really understanding that, so that then, okay, I can stop blaming myself for being triggered. Oh, okay. I can see that actually my nervous system is just doing its job.
Replace the glasses, right? I call it replacing the glasses. Take the old ones off and put the new ones on.
Totally. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So tell me about Africa. Was that for a vacation? Was that for work? So
Oh,
did you
Africa.
notice any differences you saw there with the body regulation there anywhere else? Like, was there something there that they did that you took into your toolbox that they do different from the Western side of things?
Well, I went to Africa. I went to Zimbabwe because that's where I got accepted to do my TEDx talk.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so I just did that on November 4th, so not too
Oh,
long ago. I'm still waiting for it
congrats.
to come out. Yeah, it should be out in another month or so. And the talk
Awesome.
was, it's called Resolving Anxiety and Trauma Through the Nervous System is the title of the talk. And I just went ahead of time and did a bunch of safari adventures and stuff like that because I wasn't about to go across the world
Well,
and not. So that's what
exactly.
I did.
Exactly.
But one thing I would say, and I almost put this in my TEDx talk, but I kept having to shave off minutes of it, so I ended up taking it out. But one thing I could say about, the African culture, first of all, I met the sweetest people there, like the most kind eyes and smile.
Wow.
And what I was seeing a lot is like, there's so much poverty and trauma in Africa. And what's true and what's like really vital to their whole culture is, community connection, and dance. And actually both of those things were in my TEDx talk, speaking to how vital intentional movement is, and I spoke to dance in my TEDx talk and spoke to connection and how important connection is with others for us, for our nervous system to feel a sense of safety and connection, because we're all just walking around with these social nervous systems that need physical touch and need eye contact and need connection, for our emotional wellness, really.
And they would dance barefooted, right? Which helps you ground yourself, no?
I mean, a lot of them, yeah. Yeah.
And that's another beautiful thing, right? You're touching the actual earth. You're getting
Mhm.
grounded, you're connecting with others, you're staying in the moment because you're dancing, so you're not thinking about, well, worrying about this, that, and the third. So I think I love dancing. I think dancing is the best way to get out of your head and into
Totally.
the present moment.
Totally. And what's true is that what it also does is that it discharges sympathetic energy or stressful energy. So we can do that by shaking or, yoga or like punching some pillows and letting out our anger, like whatever it is. It really doesn't matter. It's like what your medicine is, like, but like to use your body, your movements, your breath, and your sounds to express outwardly, what you're feeling on the inside. And what it does is just gets any stuck, stagnant energy to move. And, big picture, if you look at our the reality of us, we're 99.9999% energy, right? And so it's like we have to move these bodies that hold this massive energy that we all are. And what happens to most, I think, of society is that we sit too much and we're too sedentary and we don't express through the body. And what happens is it all just gets stuck and we get tight, and then we start to, it starts to affect everything, every system of the body, really.
So other forms of releasing energy like exercise, right? Dancing, shaking. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any other suggestions as far as body releasing of energy?
Yeah, my one of my favorites is Kundalini Yoga. I have a website called yogadoctors.tv, and it has about 100 plus. There's both Kundalini Yoga and Hatha Yoga exercises on there, but I love Kundalini Yoga because it's very quick and it's very efficient for discharging energy. It has
Oh,
mantra and mudra and usually a lot of like repetitive movement in it.
wow.
And when I learned it in India in like 2014, I didn't quite understand why it worked so well. I just thought it was kind of weird, like all the things that they did.
Yeah, I gotta see it now.
I would just feel so good after class. And so I just kept studying. And then once I actually studied the nervous system, I realized, oh, this is why Kundalini yoga is so effective, actually, is because a lot of the movements and the sounding and chanting and even the mudra, that you do with the hands, it all is it's calming for the limbic brain, it's activating for the vagus nerve. And so I understood later why it works. And so what I do is use usually 2 or 3 Kundalini techniques right before we go into a deeper somatic reparenting meditation, and it just clears the energy field, calms the mind, and then helps one drop into the body so that then you can go deeper into meditation.
And also, when you're grounded, you're able to fight old feelings. I notice when I go on vacation, I can regulate and I can talk to myself about any sensation I'm feeling. I can say, hey, that's not who I am. Everybody gets this. Stop worrying. But when I get back home into the pattern, it's like you go back into the rinse cycle of your own thought process. But like doing stuff like the yoga is able to keep you grounded because you're burning the energy, like dancing. And I find like when I come out of the gym, I'm able to re-regulate myself because I'm so in the moment from all that movement. And it's such a great thing to, you know, get some type of it helps you ground yourself. And when you're grounded, you're able to help yourself cognitively and talk to yourself and get yourself out of whatever it is, if you got raped as a child or something traumatic that happened to you.
Yeah, exactly. What you're saying is like tending to the body to come back to a regulated state so that you can then come at whatever it is you're working with, right, from a regulated place, because it's only from that place that a lot of things. One, every system of the body can heal from that ventral vagal state. That's massive. But then also we can only access compassion and curiosity in a ventral vagal state. And so that's huge when you think about trauma work. We have to have a lot of compassion for ourselves, for our own inner child, for others, when we're doing that trauma healing work. And like you just think of that word curiosity, like to be able to access curiosity, which only happens in a ventral vagal state, is really important because that means we can even be in positive possibility or think of creative solutions, for our life because we're in a ventral vagal state. So keeping that sense of curiosity and kind of wonder and like awe, for life and being willing to keep exploring, is a big, you could say, like side effect of being in that ventral vagal state.
And I feel like being in New York City, everything's concrete. There's no form of getting you in the moment. There's no ocean. There's no trees that wave around. So you're in a subway. You kind of keep doing the same routine. Like sometimes when I was young, I didn't even notice I got to my job. I was like, I'm already here. And there's no like going to Africa. You come out of your house and you got a waterfall in front of you. So it's like, bam, you're able to kind of snap out of whatever you're going through and get back into the moment. But it's hard to like when you're in New York to like snap out. It's like there's nothing here that can. You have to literally like do the yoga or do some meditation to actually force yourself to get grounded.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, we were just talking how I lived in New York my junior year of college, and I can remember having to take an elevator and a subway just to get to Central Park if it was sunny to feel the sunlight on my skin. And I'm from Florida, and so the whole seasonal affective disorder really, really affected me. And so yeah, I would have to take drastic measures if I lived there full time for sure of getting grounding mats or something like that, taking frequent weekend trips where I'm getting out into the forest or hiking or getting to the ocean. And because nature is so vital, it helps it really that when we can, like you were talking about being barefoot, right? It's like when we can, so there's whole books written about this, like 10 minutes a day barefoot in the sand or the grass can help, the Earth's electromagnetic field will help normalize your biological functions, right? So one of the best ways to regulate ourselves is just go get into nature. And I usually, for me, it takes like 2 to 3 hours a day is what I try to get in nature every day. And I feel really lucky because I can go outside, here on the North Shore of Kauai, and it's very beautiful. And, you're just kind of surrounded by this lush nature. But
Yeah.
it's really like whatever for you or anybody listening, what's the thing as the kid that like brought you so much joy? For me, that was the ocean. So as long as I'm anywhere near the ocean, doing anything around the ocean, my inner child's very, very happy. And so that will show up in how much joy I feel. So it's really about what's the thing for you, any of you listening that genuinely brings you joy or like a sense of safety or connection. And that might be a place, it might be a person, or people or your pets, it could be a time of day. Like maybe you particularly enjoy sunset or sunrise, and just making it a point every single day to do that thing that creates safety and connection in your system, because then you're throughout the day imprinting your system with these, they're called ventral vagal imprints, right? These
Yeah.
tiny moments throughout the day where you imprint that feeling, those feelings in your system.
Summer, do you find like habit is so detrimental. Like I did a whole thing on it on Instagram, how habit could be like quicksand. Like if you
Mm,
created like 5 years in the house, you like I was in an apartment back in the day, and I was going through my healing process, and there was so much trauma in me. Once I left it and I came into my home, I got married. I was like, I left all that habit behind me, and it's just so much easier to kind of reset. But
mhm.
then like habit, like you say, okay, I just took summer's class and I'm motivated, but then you go home and you have those habits of, let's say, being in the same home for 20 years and bad habits mentally of constantly telling yourself whatever, good, constantly feeling distracted. I got to clean the house all day long. Like, right? I feel like habit is such an enemy sometimes, like bad habit, I guess.
Yeah, totally. And what's your question specifically about it?
So how much in your classes do you recognize like habit as something to tackle, to be aware of,
Mm.
in order for the person to keep the change alive when they get back home? Because when you're in your classes or on vacation, yeah, I'm motivated, let's do this. But when they go back and they go back to that routine that is so ingrained in them, of like negative thinking, of having to clean the house all day, of that anxiety that they had in that house,
Mhm.
is that a big plays a big part in what you show your clients when you have your classes?
Yeah, I would say like I look at it as like, at first it's an attitude. I think Joe Dispenza talks about this. He calls like something's an attitude first, and then it becomes a habit, and then it becomes a pattern, right? And then it becomes part of your personality.
Yeah.
That just happens over time. And so if you look at like where that really starts, it's really like because we're really going into talking about like reprogramming the subconscious mind, right? And so that really all of that programming happens the first 7 years of life. And so in my programs what we do is literally go through each chakra and childhood stage of development, tailoring the somatic reparenting process to that, because we have to actually go back and understand where this inner child, where your little boy or your little girl, where they developed these negative beliefs, right? And so it's about understanding, reassuring, right? Comforting, loving that part of you, and also understanding like what were, maybe two or three negative beliefs, that came from that experience, and then updating that part of your inner child as to, what's true now. Because what they need is, oh, that makes sense. They need your understanding and validation of like, oh, that makes sense that you feel that way, and that all of those beliefs came from that experience. That makes so much sense, right? You being the one to actually validate and reassure your inner child. And then part of it is developing new, you're talking about routines. I'm a big proponent of morning practice. You like having something that you do in the morning that is, because it's when the subconscious mind is most influenced, in the morning and then right before we go to sleep. So whatever it is you do in the morning, whether it's yoga, and I always suggest meditation, or maybe you dance in the morning, or maybe you go for a walk, or maybe you make sure to see the morning light, like in the sunrise. Whatever your practice is in the morning that starts your day from a grounded, centered place, those are the qualities that are going to feed into your day. And so, understanding that if I start my day texting, my brain's going to be much more distractible. I'm not going to be as focused throughout the day, because that's the pattern, you started,
Yeah.
at the beginning of the day. And so part of it is okay, let's actually go back and update these old beliefs that the subconscious mind learned, right, in those first 7 years of life. And then it's taking responsibility for your current adult self, who gets to make conscious decisions in every moment about, what they want their life to look like. And all of my work is very much orienting people to like, this is how I say it, is like starting to live your life from the perspective of your nervous system.
Hmm. I remember my dentist told me I always destroy all my toothbrushes. I really get in there. And she said, switch to your left hand because you won't destroy it. And my gums are pretty roughed up because I don't know, I'm getting leaving my anger out on my teeth or something. So so when I switched to my left, it's almost like what you're saying. I had to make a conscious effort, use your left. But I was like, I didn't know even how to like run the routine. And I was like, what am I doing? With the right, you already like you can like do it with your eyes closed, but then the left, I had to make a conscious effort to bottom to up to, and then before you know it, I'm always using my left, and it's already ingrained in me. So,
Yeah.
like what you said, turn everything upside its head. Like in the morning, if you're touching your phone, switch to meditation or
Mhm.
switch to looking outside your window for 20 minutes and enjoy whatever view you have that's beautiful, and just kind of change everything that's in your day that you feel like is going to suck you back into that negative routine.
Yeah, totally. Because what we know is like if to change a pattern, we have to change our response to things, And so that's what's really true. And so also I would just say because it's not like a blanket statement that like everyone's going to benefit from sitting still in meditation every morning. Because if you, and I just want to say this to any of the listeners that are, say your default is really more of overwhelm and shutdown and collapse and like more of that freeze response,
Mhm.
be very hard for you to sit still in meditation, because you actually have a lot of sympathetic energy that needs to move through the body. So probably a walking meditation is going to be more beneficial for you in
Mhm.
that sense. And so what I would say to anyone that's trying to develop, what is that pattern, what is that morning routine for me, which can look different every day. Like I'll often get up and I'll just sit, for a minute and like ask my body like what's needed today. What do you want to do today? Because my body actually wants to do something different every day. I'll
Mhm.
either go work out or do resistance training, or I'll do yoga, or I'll do my hypopressive training, or I'll do meditation, or I'll do breath work, or I'll go on a hike, or just is different every day what my body wants to do. So getting in tune with what is your somatic urge, like meaning what is the urge of your body, like do you want to dance, like have you been going running yourself ragged nonstop and actually what's needed is to like sit still in meditation, you
Yeah.
know is your physical body totally exhausted from whatever it is you're going through, and maybe a breath work journey is the most realistic thing for you because your physical body feels exhausted, and so it's just depending on the state of your nervous system and what you're trying to unwind and what your
Yeah.
default is and all of that stuff. Morning routines can be very tailored and personalized, but in general, I would just say, really listen to, tap in, start asking your body, like, how do you want to move? What is it that you need, today? And so that you can start allowing your body to lead you.
It's funny because I'm trying to get my my entrepreneur of the healing page up, and my body will tell me like no more phone, and I literally override that because I'm doing somatic. You get really connected with your body, and I'll override that. I'll look at my phone. Meanwhile, my body's screaming at me saying, "Leave the phone alone. You don't need it right now."
Yeah, totally.
So, how much does food play, like diet, play into affecting the nervous system and affecting how a person feels throughout the day? I know too much sugar, too much caffeine. Like how big is that? How important a role did that play?
I think food is a massive role, and when we look at that, just speaking to it from that nervous system perspective again, like that ventral vagal state, the vagus nerve is in charge of digestion, how we digest food, how we digest emotions. And so you could be eating the healthiest food in the world, but if you're chronically dysregulated, your vagus nerve isn't sending that message to your gut that says all is well and like you can do your job, right? To digest and
Mm,
eliminate your food. And so that's what I mean of like really like going to this like zoomed out level of like
mm,
getting to the root of people's issue, which is like to me everything it is. It's as we know now, every single system of the body is affected, whether you're in a regulated state or in a dysregulated state. And so I would say that, and I would say, I went through about 3.5 years of gut healing, maybe around, I think I ended it in around 2018 or so, and I had everything under the sun wrong with my gut because I grew up in the South and was given, nothing organic with full of pesticides, and I was given antibiotics and all the things, and so my gut was a bit of a wreck, and
mhm.
so I'm a big proponent of taking the GI MAPS test or the GI effects test, which you can get from a naturopath or a functional medicine practitioner, which can tell you, do you have any pathogens or parasites or candida? And, you can start to personalize your probiotic. And so you just take the guessing out of it. So if you're working on nutrition and gut healing, regulating your nervous system should be at the top of your list for sure.
Wow. So can you give everyone a peek of like your daily routine, like how you wake up, what time you wake up in the morning, what you start with, and then what time you go to bed, and the the whole gambit of your day?
Yeah, it changes a lot. But what I've been trying to do since I got back from Africa is get up with the sun. And I just have to say I'm not at all, I've never been a morning person. I'm like doing my best to condition myself to do this. But I'll get up because I've been going to sleep by like 8 or 9 p.m. And that's been a big shift. Like, they say we'll feel more rested the more hours we get before 10 p.m. And I really feel like that's been true for me. And so I've been trying to go to bed earlier, off my phone at least a couple hours before going to sleep. And so I'll go 10, 15 minutes of watching that first bit of the sunrise because they say that that morning light gets into the mitochondria in your retina and it helps with your circadian rhythm and boosting energy levels and lowering stress and has tons and tons of research behind it.
Wow.
Then I'll usually go on a little walk in my neighborhood, and sometimes I'm doing mantra, or sometimes I'm doing breath work while I'm walking, and then I'll come back and sometimes I'll do yoga. I always do 20 minutes of meditation in the morning, but sometimes depending on what my body needs. Sometimes I'm doing resistance training, sometimes I'm doing yoga. So it just depends. And I think for people that are really working on sleep, the nervous system's really important. When you're wanting to lower stress levels and improve sleep, the nervous system's everything, and getting your circadian rhythm, back into alignment, because you just look at like normal society, we don't move enough, we're too sedentary, we're not connected to the sun or nature nearly enough, and we're looking at these little devices all day long that narrows our vision, and our eyes are very, very connected to the nervous system. And so if you look at, like, this is one example, if you look at like texting, right? Or just working on your phone, you're like zoomed in on your vision, and that automatically will put your nervous system into a hypervigilant state, into an activated state. And so if we can start to do things, this is why nature's so good, getting into nature. And this is what I noticed in Africa on my safari adventures, right? Because you're looking for animals like in the distance and far away.
Totally in the moment.
Yeah, and I started to notice my vision actually improve. It was amazing because I had actually
Wow.
been on the computer a little more than normal before my trip, kind of
Oh,
reading my TEDx talk and preparing for it and all this stuff. And so I was just noticing, like, wow, like my eye muscles were getting tight from being on the computer for so long. So actually working with, your vision and like far away, zoomed out, like when you just go to the beach and just stare at the ocean, for example, it's just so good for us. So yeah, so that's some of the things. And again, what I do every day, it changes a little bit, but those are some of the basics.
I read about with somatic that these lions they go kill an animal and they'll feed their cubs and then they have to deregulate because that's such a traumatic experience to kill an animal and they'll lay out in the sun and in the book I was reading it says become the lion, feel the warmth of the floor. Like I'm sure mentally they're doing the whole somatic grounding work of looking out into the field, enjoying the leaves and feeling the ground as they lay on it because
Yeah.
it's crazy. They probably kill like every week. So much trauma there, but animals haven't figured out how to regulate themselves. And they said, I think the book said like literally like in a half hour or an hour, he's like the lion's like totally regulated again and back to normal.
Yeah, totally. And you look at, it's actually what we're all, I think a lot of us in the somatic world are trying to educate people on, which is like, look at this primal nature that we have. If you watch like a rabbit, or something being chased by a bigger animal, and they go into a freeze and hide and kind of play dead, and then the animal leaves them alone, right? The bigger animal, the predator leaves them alone, then you're going to watch that rabbit get up and shake it off and then go
Mm,
about their day, right?
yeah.
And that's actually what needs to happen, because what we know is that trauma isn't what happened to us, but it's more of this incomplete response of the nervous system that didn't get to happen in the moment.
Yeah.
So you think of like a little child that didn't get to fight back, or didn't wasn't able to run away, and this can happen as an adult too, of course, but if looking at like what's the incomplete response that the nervous system needed to complete, right? In finding, this is a lot of it, like finding what is that, like does the body need to push, does the body need to say no, does what needs to actually happen that didn't get to happen during that traumatic experience. And that's a lot of what somatic therapy helps people with.
And in your classes, you do like, is it personalized per person? Do you make the adjustment for each student or client that comes in and say, okay, let's adjust, the way we work with you and the way we work with you? Is it kind of like what you're saying? The adjustment has to be made per person?
Yeah, I do group work. Like I have group programs, but then in those group programs, people get one-on-one work with me. So I can take people as far as I can in the group. And then the one-on-one work is for, more detailed work. And of course, in the one-on-one work, it's an open dialogue back and forth. So I'm hearing what the person's saying every time. So then I can track them and give them more, personalized suggestions on what to say or maybe what to ask, depending on what's coming up for them.
And Summer, so what's the common thread that of clients that come in? Is there something, or maybe I'm not knowing, is there something that you notice over and over for all the clients that do come into your classes that is the common thread? Like phone, I'm sure is the biggest issue of deregulation of your body. Is it like just to try to make money? Is it a hustle? Like what makes us get out of being one with nature, one with ourselves, one with the present moment?
So your question is, say your question to me again, because I kind of
So like what's the common thread you notice for people that are deregulated or dysregulated in your classes that they tell their story of what their daily routine looks like, and what's like the common thread that you've noticed, like they're always on their phone all day, they're too busy overthinking rumination, they're worried about making their money. Like, is
got
there
it.
a common theme?
Yeah, and it mostly is bulldozing over the body. They're mostly bulldozing over what their nervous system or the pace of their nervous system. That is generally I get people and they're exhausted. They're really depleted, or
Mm,
they've hit a plateau with talk therapy, and they kind of understand at this point, okay, I can feel that trauma lives in my body. I can feel that I have to address this in my body and in my nervous system. Now what? And
oh
that's kind of
wow.
now
Yeah.
what? Yeah, and that's kind of when I get people. And so, as far as like getting to that point of exhaustion, overwhelm, collapse, shutdown, right? That is from bulldozing over the signs and signals of the body that's telling you you need to rest or you need to
Mhm.
take care of yourself and nurture. I would say that's the biggest thing. And, especially with, this is in my TEDx talk speaking about resolving anxiety, because most people just bulldoze through their anxiety and just keep going through their to-do list and just keep going about life, not realizing that if you're feeling anxious, you're already dysregulated. You're already in sympathetic activation or fight or flight. And so what has to happen in that moment, and this is what I teach people to do, is like we have to be in the body enough and have felt sense in this, development of somatic awareness or physical sensation, meaning, to be able to even identify the moment you go from a relaxed, calm state, to anxiety or anger or dysregulated. Like you have to be in the body enough to catch that switch, to catch, oh, my heart's really racing. Oh, I'm starting to feel really restless. Oh, it feels like I have so much energy in the body. I don't know what to do with it. And so
Yeah.
that's a big part of the work, my work that I teach people to do is how can you identify it in the moment, because no one else can do that for you, and we don't have any power over what our nervous system perceives as threat, like that's dependent on your past imprints and my past trauma. Everyone's going to be different as far as what we are triggered by. So it's not where our power lies, but where our power actually lies is in the ability to detect the moment we go into on a body level, right? Detect
And do a
uh
switch, like, yeah.
yeah, a moment of dysregulation so that we can then, oh, what is it that I need? Oh, I need to discharge the sympathetic energy, or I need to come into connection with somebody that feels safe and trustworthy to me. One of those things needs to happen, right? To come back to a regulated state. So I would say, to answer your question, a lot of people just bulldoze over, their body and the nervous system just because we simply weren't taught how to listen to it or how it
Yeah,
works.
it's so crazy, right? You know that it's affecting you, and it's just so sad that you don't know what to do with it. You're like, I feel like a mess, but I don't know how to heal it. And knowledge is so much power with that, knowing the techniques, able to stop you. Like I'm so aware of, like, when I get a trigger for something, like my wife says a certain word, I'm like, okay, and right away I'm like, I'm different from what I was 5 minutes ago, and I'm able to stop. I ask my body, okay, what's going on, body? What are we doing here? Why are we getting triggered? Where is it coming from? and I give it like a few minutes, and then they'll tell me, okay, this happened because of a past event or something like that. And just having that quick ability to notice it is so key,
Yep, totally.
because then you don't internalize and say, what's wrong with me? I'm talking to my wife and now I'm a weirdo. I can't even talk to her anymore. Because that's how I used to be. I used to be like, 1 minute I would go out with somebody I knew, I was nervous, and then I couldn't talk anymore. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? In that moment, if you're self aware, you're able to make that quick switch and say, okay, this happened because of that. And I tell people that I work with, I'm like, write it down. The minute you have a sensation that you changes your thought process, write it down and we could talk about it or you can journal about it later on.
Mhm. So big what you're saying. I think it's really important for people to hear. I say it oftentimes when people ask me, like, what's at the end of an interview, like, what's one thing that you want to leave people with? It's similar to what you just said, which is like you can stop blaming yourself for being triggered because people have this dialogue of, why haven't I healed this what by now, and like, why does this still trigger me? And then like there's so much self-blame and self criticism. And so to understand, like, actually you don't have control over any of that, and what's true is your nervous system is this 24/7 surveillance system that's going to continue doing its job and scan for cues of safety or threat. You're not going to be able to stop that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's either you want to be its friend or you're going to start saying it's your enemy. Like you make a decision because it's not going to change.
Totally. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So do you have a lagoon next to your house? I saw a beautiful, like you meet with your sister or something like that. And
I have next to the ocean and a cold river that I jump into quite often.
yeah, I was like, I have to write this down. I'm like, you have this beautiful backdrop, and I'm like, damn, I want to be there.
It's
So
really beautiful here. Yeah, the nature is very grounding.
incredible. So my goodness, I mean, I could see a piece of the ocean here, not too far, but you have a whole beautiful backdrop, and that's amazing that you can go there and you know leave technology behind and be one with nature.
Yeah, I feel really lucky, and I think I come to the conclusion that I get to live in this really sacred place and this really beautiful place because I work with people and healing trauma, and then I can just close my computer and I can just go jump in the cold river or jump in the salt water, and it just sort of washes it all off of me. It's quite healing for me, regulating.
So now the deep sea diving that you do, you do so many great things. How is that experience for you? Like
The free diving.
free diving.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I got into free diving through my divorce when I was going through my divorce, and I realized right away how it was building my capacity to go with to be with what I was going through. And because really with free diving, you learn how to do a little breathe up, and then you dive down, and you're at some point your body's going to get the urge to breathe. And they say in free diving, okay, when you get the urge to breathe, relax more. And you're just like, oh, you're like, easier said than done, right? And so when you're down there and your body gets the urge to breathe, you're just face to face with your sympathetic response, right? You're just face to face with your stress response. And so to me, free diving is like building, and breath work in general too, is like building capacity, right? To be with stress, to be with a stressful response in the body while also staying present to what's actually happening, also staying present to, diaphragm contractions that are happening, which happens in
Uh-huh.
free diving, and like when I actually need to go up. And so all of it is, I really look at, really, I see everything from the perspective of the nervous system now,
Yeah,
but
it's cool.
specifically free diving is like, it's such good nervous system work. It's just such good nervous system work because it's breath work, but then you also get all the benefits, of course, of being in the ocean, which we all know is so healing.
So now when it's time to breathe, do you feel a sensation and then does your cognitive mind react to you're not able to breathe or
Your body, it's a very body visceral reaction, right? Of just like, we need oxygen. And so, they say like the diaphragm will contract, and it's a way to kind of signal to the body that like we need oxygen soon.
Mm,
And so, this is why they always say dive with a buddy, so that if you're pushing it a little bit, because I would say if you're pushing it a little bit, like there is always a chance to black out. And so a lot of the level 1 freediving certification was safety, and how to bring your partner back from blackouts. And so I'm a lot of, I don't suggest this at home, but this is just, I'm generally by myself when I'm like swimming and free
Mm,
diving. So I never really push it. I kind of know my exact limit. I know how
yeah.
long I can go. I know I can stay under there for 45 seconds and be safe. And so that's typically what I do because I'm by myself. But when I went to Tulum last year or earlier this year to free dive the cenotes, I hired a free dive instructor and actually did the, going down the rope like vertical, just like we did in the certification, which
Right.
I typically don't do anymore. I just kind of mermaid around.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that was a whole different experience of going straight down, the vertical rope into the deep abyss. Like, it's a mind trip, for sure. Free diving is, but I see it as really, really good nervous system work.
So how long can you hold your breath for?
Not very long. Like I would say maybe a minute if I'm moving.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There's a great documentary of a guy who free dives and by his house, and he made friends with an octopus. Yeah, with an
Oh, yes,
octopus.
the octopus teacher.
Yeah, and he saw the octopus grow, and it was looking for him and hugging him, and he spent
Mm.
like every day looking for it, and then eventually they just died. They mate somewhere, and he saw it discolored one day, and I was like so emotional. I'm like, this poor little octopus. It's amazing, and the octopus will come and wrap its fingers around it. It was like so amazing.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. And you do Reiki too. It's amazing. I had a 2-day class on Reiki with the chakras. Yeah,
Nice.
way
Yeah.
back when.
Yeah, I went through like all four levels, became a Reiki master and teacher, and I working with my Reiki teacher, she was the one that really I think helped me clear so much energy and helped me connect back to my intuition. Honestly, I was in, physical therapy world and very much logical minded, and she helped me. I did trades with this. She's a psychic friend of mine and my Reiki teacher, and we ended up doing trades for like a couple years actually. And so I feel really lucky because I had a couple of years of regular Reiki sessions, regular intuitive sessions to helped clear my energy field. I think I just had a lot to clear from my childhood. And yeah, I see Reiki as, and part of my facilitator training is teaching people Reiki 1 and 2, because you can certainly be doing energy work in Reiki at the same time you're doing, somatic reparenting work with people.
So you actually self remove your negative energy with Reiki?
You can do self Reiki. Yeah, Reiki 1 is like how to do it on yourself and how to do it on even like your pets and things like that. And then Reiki, once you get into Reiki 2, it's more about the distant healing. So learning how to do it, you can do it over the phone or over Zoom, and so it works quite well that way.
The primary benefits, it's removing kind of negative energy from your body.
Yeah, it's activating the parasympathetic nervous system, even just what you can do it hands on or hands off. But it's basically lowers everything they know about Reiki is it lowers stress levels. It helps to clear sometimes it's just stagnant energy in the body from physical tension. Sometimes it's, emotional content can come up during Reiki sessions that people don't even know what it's related to, but they just start crying, or feel the opposite, feel blissful or joyful, once their energy starts moving. And so I think every single one of us has the capacity to, do energy work on ourselves and other people. It's just a matter of, having an imprint that you're an energetic being. Most people need an embodied experience of like some sort of energy work themselves where they got like good results and they could feel the effects of it to start to shift their mindset into like, oh, maybe I want to do this for other people. But in general, putting the hands on the body, even if you're not Reiki trained, is very calming to the system. Helps bring you back to the body. Doing like upper arm squeezes, right? If you tend to dissociate and check out of the body, squeezing your thighs, whatever it is that you need to do to bring yourself back, to the body is really important. And some people need to do it. If you're at the start of this journey, you might need to do it many, many times a day.
Wow. What do you think about cold showers?
Yeah, I got into cold water therapy when I went through my Kundalini training in India. They're very big on cold showers in the morning before sadhana. And I don't necessarily do it straight away in the morning before sadhana, but I'll go jump in my little cold river here, usually 4 or 5 times a week. And it's just a very good reset for the nervous system. It also helps, we were talking about building capacity in the nervous system. And so you put your body in an uncomfortable environment and you teach your body how to breathe through it and stay calm. You're increasing your nervous system's capacity
Oh,
for
wow.
stress, essentially.
Kind of like the deep sea diving that you do, free diving, right?
It's a similar concept, yeah, of increasing capacity, and then all the other benefits of cold water therapy, which is just like a straight up flush, right, of blood flow to the organs once you get out.
So would you say like the sympathetic nervous system's capacity is similar to like our brain capacity? Like if we don't use our brain, it'll shrink into like we're like, what? What time is it? Like if we read and we utilize more of our brain, it'll expand and we'll notice things during our day. We're quicker with this, we're quicker with that. Similar to the sympathetic nervous system, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just look at, a lot of people with trauma, like in general, they have a very low capacity for a lot of things, but let's say like for connection and intimacy, right? The capacity is very low for that because they've had trauma in connection, they haven't healed it in connection yet. And so it's important for them to slowly in a titrated way, meaning a little bit at a time,
Mm-hmm.
be able to bring themselves into connection, right? Be able to expand their embodied experience of keeping eye contact with somebody, letting themselves be seen and heard and witnessed, letting themselves be reflected. And so that's one way. The authentic relating workshops and stuff like that, I think, are so great because they're all about building our capacity to be in connection, and even if it's just platonic intimacy with another human. Because there's this great saying, Alanya Forsberg says, any trauma made in connection needs to be healed in connection.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like the dancing that happened in Zimbabwe, right? Everybody's connecting, so they're expanding their sympathetic nervous system and getting it more flexible and
Yes, and you keep bringing back to sympathetic nervous system, which is the part of our system that mobilizes our energy. And so, most people, when we feel unsafe, the sympathetic nervous system as fight or flight. But you also have this healthy side of the sympathetic nervous system, which is when we feel safe, it feels like having great energy and being active and being playful or dancing, or something like that. And so, yeah, it is developing this like healthy relationship with that side of our nervous system that helps to mobilize our energy and get us keep us moving forward.
is it okay if I talk about your mom? Because you mentioned that in a post, how much your mom means to you. If you can
Sure.
tell us about her importance in your life and how she molded your pathway in the future.
Mm. She she's actually one of the bookends of my TEDx talk, and I share a pretty big trauma of my childhood that is surrounded around her in my TEDx talk. So I'll just leave that for my TEDx talk. But I would say that's a big question, but the quick answer is, she's just always been my biggest cheerleader. And it's like even she's always been my biggest supporter, even if she didn't quite understand like what I was doing, because I've always been a little bit like, I don't know, a little bit ahead of the curve in a way of like people didn't quite understand like what I was doing. So even if she didn't understand me, she would still support me. She's still
Wow.
like this till this
Amazing.
day, where it's like I say to her, I'm like, gosh, any confidence I have like was instilled from her for sure, because she was just always just by my side, biggest supporter, just like ready to fight with me. Like it's just
You
wasn't
love
really,
your free diving?
yeah, really, she hates my Frida. Yeah, no. She thinks I couldn't get any further from her, Florida to Kauai, but I was like, it's just where my soul wants to be, so don't take it personally.
She's
But
gonna
yeah,
be a mom no matter what, right? She's gonna have mom ways.
yeah, totally. Yeah, but she's a beautiful being, has had a big impact on me, as most mothers do.
Yeah, you have such good, peaceful energy. I mean,
Mm.
amazing. It's amazing just to figure it all out and to know that how your body works and to re-regulate it. It's such a gift to be so self-aware. I wish more people can really dive in and just realize that you can catch it, and you could just change it and don't sit with it because wants all this clutter inside of us.
Absolutely. Thank you for that reflection.
Yeah. Awesome. Can you tell us any thing that you got coming up that you want to share with everyone?
So let's see. Sure, I have is kind of ongoing in a sense, but I have basically two routes of group programs. One's a 6-month personal healing program called Foundations of Healing, And the other is for coaches, therapists, practitioners. It's a 9-month somatic reparenting method facilitator training. And so,
Mhm.
kind of two group programs, one for personal healing, one for professional development. And they both include one-on-one work.
Awesome. And is there a website that they can go to?
Yeah, Soma, Soma, healingcollective.com is a great way to find me. And I'm pretty active on Instagram, which is just dr_somer_Nicole.
Awesome. Awesome. Nicole Sommer, thank you so much for coming, and what great info and what great knowledge. My mind has been expanded.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I hope it was really useful for those listening.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Summer, enjoy your day.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Right, aloha.
All right. Aloha.